The wind moved gently through the tall pine trees, carrying the soft scent of the forest. In the middle of that wide green world stood a small clearing where a woman named Mira worked alone. Her hands were rough and red, her clothes simple and dusty, and her face calm but tired. She was 7 months pregnant, but still, she lifted wood and stones with slow care. Every swing of her hammer echoed in the quiet forest. Mira had come here 3 weeks ago, leaving behind the noise of the town. She had no family nearby, no one to help her, and no wish to stay in a crowded place. The forest, with its peace and its silence, felt like a safe place for her and her unborn child. She wanted to build a small home with her own hands, a cabin strong enough to protect them both from rain, cold, and loneliness. Each morning she woke up with the first light, ate a little bread, and started her work. She had brought a few tools, some dry food, and blankets. The forest gave her water from a clear stream nearby, and the rest she managed through her will. The days were long, but she did not complain. Every board she placed, every nail she hit felt like a promise to her baby. Sometimes when she sat under the half-built roof, she talked softly to her belly. She told stories about how the world could be kind if someone worked with patience. She spoke about birds and trees, about kindness and strength. Her voice was gentle, and though she was alone, she never sounded afraid. At night, the stars filled the dark sky above her. The forest became quiet except for the soft cry of an owl or the rustle of small animals in the grass. Mira would sit by a small fire, warming her hands. The firelight shone on her face, showing both hope and exhaustion. She missed human voices, but told herself this silence was better than pain. She had left behind a life that had too many harsh memories. The father of her child had left months ago, and after that, she had only herself to depend on. The cabin slowly took shape. The walls stood upright. The roof started to close the open sky, and the smell of fresh-cut wood mixed with pine needles. Her hands shook sometimes when she lifted heavy pieces, but she never gave up. She rested only when the sun began to fall behind the trees. One morning, clouds covered the sky and the air turned cold. Mira woke up to the sound of rain on the half-finished roof. She smiled weakly, pulling a thin blanket over herself. Her small shelter kept most of the rain out, but drops still fell near her feet. She made a small fire with wet wood, feeding it slowly until it burned bright again. Her belly felt heavy, and she sat still for a long time, listening to the forest. That day, she realized how far she was from everything. There was no road nearby, no voice, no sign of help. The world outside the forest seemed far away. Yet she felt a strange peace in that loneliness. She whispered to her baby, saying that they would be safe here, that this place would become their new home. Later that afternoon, the rain stopped, and a thin mist covered the trees. Mira went out to cut more wood. Her steps were slow, but her eyes were steady. She followed the stream to find fallen branches and carried them back one by one. Each trip tired her more, but she refused to stop. She was used to pain. It was nothing compared to what she had faced before. By sunset, she had enough wood to finish the wall. She wiped the sweat from her forehead and looked at her work with quiet pride. Her cabin was small but strong. The thought that she had built it alone gave her strength. She sat on a rock, rubbing her belly gently, and felt a small kick. That small movement brought tears to her eyes. She smiled and whispered, "We are doing it, little one." That night, a strange sound woke her. It was faint, like a branch breaking, but it came again and again. Mira rose from her blanket and looked outside. The moonlight fell on the trees, showing silver shadows. Her heart beat fast. She grabbed her small lamp and stepped outside. There was nothing near her cabin, only the forest and the sound of wind. She stood still, watching the darkness. Then she heard it again, a soft cry from far away. It sounded like someone calling out. The voice was weak, unsure, almost lost. Mira felt fear first. She was alone and had no weapon. But then her heart softened. The voice sounded human and in trouble. She hesitated, then picked up her lamp and walked toward the sound. The cold air touched her skin and the forest floor was wet. She followed the faint voice until she reached the stream. There, on the other side of the water, she saw a man. He was lying half on the ground, half against a tree. His clothes were torn and his face looked pale. He seemed lost and weak. When he saw her lamp, his eyes widened a little, as if surprised to see anyone here. "Help," he said in a rough, low voice. Mira stood frozen for a moment. Her mind ran fast. She did not know who he was or what he wanted. Still, she could not leave him there. She looked around, then stepped carefully across the shallow water. When she reached him, she saw that his hands were shaking from cold. His backpack was torn and his boots were covered in mud. He looked like he had been walking for days. She knelt beside him and asked softly, "Are you hurt?" He shook his head slowly. "Lost," he whispered. "I was hiking. I slipped on the hill. I don't know where I am." Mira looked at his tired face. The man's eyes held a quiet fear. She helped him stand, though it took all her strength. Her arms trembled, but she pulled him across the stream and guided him to her small cabin. When they reached it, the man looked at her work with surprise. "You built this?" he asked weakly. Mira nodded, helping him sit near the fire. "It's not finished yet," she said softly. "But it's warm." He smiled faintly, his lips dry. "You saved me," he murmured. Mira poured a little water into a tin cup and gave it to him. "Rest," she said. "We can talk when you have strength." The man closed his eyes and his breathing slowed. Mira sat near him, watching the fire burn low. Her thoughts were heavy and confused. She had come here to be alone, to escape the world. But now in her quiet cabin there was another life to care for besides her own. The rain started again outside, gentle and soft. Mira listened to it, feeling the weight of change in the air. The forest that had once held only her and her child now held a stranger too. She did not know if this would bring peace or trouble, but she knew one thing for sure. Nothing would be the same again. Morning came with a pale light that spread slowly across the forest. The rain had stopped, leaving small drops shining on the leaves. Inside the cabin, Mira sat beside the fire, adding wood carefully. The man she had rescued still slept, wrapped in a blanket she had given him. His breathing was slow, and even now, Mira looked at him for a while. She still did not know his name, but she could see he was not dangerous. His face looked kind, though tired. There was a small cut near his eyebrow, and his hands had scratches. His clothes were still damp, but his color had returned a little. Her own body ached from helping him last night. She moved her hands over her back and sighed quietly. The baby inside her kicked softly, reminding her she was not alone. She whispered to herself that everything was going to be fine. She had faced many hard days before, and she would face this one too. When the man opened his eyes, he looked confused for a moment. Then he saw the small fire, the walls of wood, and Mira sitting near him. He tried to sit up, but she stopped him gently. "You need to rest," she said in a calm voice. He nodded slowly. "Thank you," he said. His voice was rough, still weak. "I thought I would die out there." "You were lucky," she said. "The forest can be cruel to those who are not ready for it." He gave a small smile. "I guess I was foolish." "My name is Ravi." "Mira," she replied. They sat in silence for a while. Ravi looked around the cabin. The roof was half done, and the floor was made of rough boards. There were tools lying near the wall, a small pile of food, and a pot hanging above the fire. Everything was simple but strong. "You built this alone?" Ravi asked, still surprised. "Yes," Mira said, her voice steady. "I wanted a place far from people. Somewhere quiet." He looked at her hands, rough and strong from work, and then at her belly. "You're expecting," he said softly. She nodded. "That is why I needed to be safe. I want to raise my child in peace." Ravi looked down at the fire. "Peace," he repeated, as if testing the word. "That sounds like something many people want, but few find." Mira did not answer. She took the pot from the fire and poured some warm water into a wooden cup. "Drink this," she said. "You need it." Ravi thanked her and drank slowly. His eyes softened as he watched her move around. There was something calm about her, something that made the cabin feel like more than a shelter. As the day went on, Ravi grew stronger. He told her that he had been hiking with friends but got separated during a storm. He had walked for 2 days without finding his way back. His map was ruined and his food was gone. When he saw the stream last night, he had been too weak to move farther. Mira listened carefully. "Your friends might still be searching for you," she said. "Maybe," he said, looking down. "But I do not know which direction they went." "Then you should rest here until you can walk again," she said. Ravi hesitated. "I don't want to trouble you." "It's not trouble," Mira replied. "No one should face the forest alone when they are weak." For the next few days, Ravi stayed in the cabin. He helped Mira with small tasks, though she often refused when he tried to lift heavy things. He fixed the leak in the roof, gathered dry branches, and repaired her broken hammer handle. Mira worked quietly beside him. They did not talk much, but their silence was not uncomfortable. Sometimes when they sat near the fire at night, He told her stories about the city. He spoke about lights, streets full of people and noise that never ended. Mira listened with half a smile, but her eyes held a distant look. "You don't miss it?" he asked once. "No," she said simply. "I had enough noise in my life. I like the sound of trees better." Ravi nodded, understanding. "The city can eat your peace," he said. "Maybe you are right to live here." As days passed, the bond between them grew. Mira began to trust him. She saw that he respected her space and never asked about her past. He helped because he wanted to, not because he pitied her. That kindness touched her heart. One evening, when the sun painted the sky orange, Ravi came back from the forest with a basket of wild berries. Mira was sitting near the doorway, sewing a small blanket. He smiled when he saw her. "For you," he said, placing the basket near her. She looked at the berries and then at him. "You are learning fast," she said. "You found the good ones. Not the bitter kind." "I had a good teacher," he said with a smile. They ate quietly, watching the sky fade into night. The cabin felt warm, not just from the fire, but from the comfort of shared company. But deep inside, Mira still worried. She knew Ravi would leave one day when he found his way out of the forest. That thought made her chest feel heavy. She had built this place to be alone, but now she had begun to feel less lonely. She had started to remember what it was like to talk to someone, to laugh, to share silence. That night, the wind blew stronger. The forest made strange sounds. Mira woke up to a soft noise outside, like footsteps. She looked at Ravi, who was still asleep, then slowly stood and took her lamp. She stepped outside, the cold air biting her face. She saw nothing at first, only the tall trees moving in the wind. But then she noticed footprints near the stream. They were not hers or Ravi's. They were fresh and deep. Her heart started to beat faster. When she returned inside, she quietly woke Ravi. "Someone has been here," she said in a low voice. Ravi got up quickly, his face serious. "Are you sure?" "Yes," she said. "Footprints near the water." He picked up a stick from the corner and went outside with her. The footprints led deeper into the forest. They followed them for a few meters, but then they disappeared into the mud. "Could be hunters," Ravi said softly. "Or maybe one of my friends." Mira shook her head. "Your friends would have called out." These steps were too quiet. Ravi looked around carefully. "We should stay alert," he said. They went back to the cabin. Mira sat by the fire, her face thoughtful. She felt uneasy. For the first time since coming here, she did not feel completely safe. Ravi sat beside her, watching the fire too. "Don't worry," he said. "Whoever it was, they're gone now." Mira nodded, but her heart stayed restless. The baby kicked again, as if sensing her fear. She placed her hand on her belly and whispered softly. Ravi watched her and said gently, "You're strong, Mira. You built a home here. No one can take that from you." His words gave her a little peace. She looked at him and said, "Thank you, Ravi. Maybe things happen for a reason." He smiled. "Maybe they do." Outside, the wind began to calm. The forest became quiet once more, but both of them knew something had changed. The forest that had once felt empty no longer felt so lonely. Someone else had been out there watching. And though neither of them spoke about it again that night, both Mira and Ravi knew that their peaceful days might not stay peaceful for long. The next few mornings were calm, but Mira could not forget those footprints. Every time she stepped outside to fetch water or wood, her eyes searched the ground and trees. The forest looked the same, but she felt something different in the air. It was a quiet that did not comfort her anymore. It was heavy, like the forest was holding its breath. Ravi noticed her worry, though she tried to hide it. He often followed her when she went outside, keeping his eyes alert. "You should not walk far," he said one morning. "At least not alone." Mira nodded, but she did not like feeling watched or guarded. She had built her life in this forest to feel strong and free, not scared. Yet she knew he was right. Something unseen was near, and it made her uneasy. That day, Ravi went to gather dry branches near the stream while Mira stayed back to fix the roof. The baby's weight made her slower now, and her body often ached. But she pushed herself. She wanted the cabin finished before winter rains came. When Ravi returned, his face was pale. "Someone's been near the stream again," he said in a low voice. Mira stopped working. "You saw footprints?" "Yes, fresh ones. And they were closer to the cabin this time." Mira felt her stomach twist. "Did you see anyone?" "No," he said. "But I felt eyes on me. They both looked toward the trees that surrounded their small clearing. The tall pines stood silent and still, but their shadows seemed deeper than before. That night, neither of them slept well. Ravi kept the fire burning while Mira rested against the wall, her hand on her belly. She could hear the forest moving, every sound sharper than usual. Once she thought she heard something like a whisper, but when she listened harder, it was gone. In the morning, the ground was wet from dew. Ravi went out early to check around. When he came back, he held something in his hand. It was a torn piece of cloth. "I found this near the trees," he said. "It's from a jacket." "Not mine." Mira looked at the cloth. It was dark brown, thick and damp. Someone had been close enough to leave it behind. She took a deep breath, trying to calm her nerves. "Maybe a hunter," she said quietly. "Maybe," Ravi said, but he did not sound sure. They decided to be careful from then on. They took turns keeping watch at night, and during the day they stayed close to the cabin. Still, the feeling of being watched never went away. One afternoon, when the sun was high, Mira sat near the fire, sewing a small shirt for the baby. Ravi was outside, splitting wood. The air was warm and the forest looked peaceful again. For the first time in days, Mira felt a little calm. Then a branch snapped nearby. She turned quickly toward the sound. Through the doorway, she saw a figure between the trees. It was tall and thin, wearing a torn jacket. For a moment, she thought her mind was playing tricks, but then the figure moved closer. "Ravi," she called softly, her voice shaking. He came running, axe in hand. When he looked where she pointed, the figure was gone. "I saw someone," she said, her heart beating fast. Ravi walked toward the edge of the clearing and looked around, but there was no one there, only silence. "Stay inside," he said firmly. He searched for almost an hour, moving quietly between trees, but he found nothing. When he returned, his face was serious. "Someone is watching us," he said. "And they don't want to be seen." Mira felt her throat tighten. "Why would anyone be here?" "I don't know," Ravi said. "Maybe they need help. Or maybe they're looking for something." Mira thought for a moment. "Or someone." They both fell silent. The idea that someone might be watching them made the air in the cabin feel colder. As evening came, Mira tried to focus on small things. She cooked a bit of soup with dried vegetables while Ravi repaired the door with an extra piece of wood. When they ate, they spoke little. The crackle of the fire was the only sound. After dinner, Ravi stepped outside to get more wood. He had not been gone even a minute when Mira heard him call her name sharply. She hurried to the door and he pointed toward a tree near the stream. There, carved into the bark, was a small mark. It looked like a simple cross shape, but fresh. The cut wood still looked bright against the dark bark. "Someone made this recently," Ravi said. "It wasn't here yesterday." Mira felt her breath quicken. "Why would they do that?" Ravi looked toward the forest again. "A sign, maybe. To mark we're here." That night, neither of them slept at all. They took turns staying awake, listening to the forest. Mira sat near the fire, her eyes on the door, her hand always resting on her belly. She whispered to her baby, promising safety. In the second half of the night, while Ravi dozed lightly, she heard something outside. It was not footsteps this time. It was a voice, a soft broken whisper calling out her name. "Mira." She froze. Her whole body went cold. She turned to Ravi, shaking him awake. "Someone's outside," she whispered. He rose quickly and picked up the axe. He moved to the door, opened it slowly, and stepped out. Mira followed him with the lamp. The night was cold, the moonlight bright enough to see the trees clearly. But there was no one there. The sound came again, but this time it was distant, fading into the dark. "Mira." Ravi looked at her, confusion and worry in his eyes. "How could they know your name?" Mira's heart raced. "I don't know. No one should know I'm here." They went back inside, locking the door with a wooden beam. Mira sat down trembling. Memories she had tried to bury came back. The voice had sounded familiar in a strange way. She tried to remember, but her mind refused. Ravi noticed her pale face. "Do you know that voice?" he asked softly. She shook her head. "I'm not sure. It felt like I did once, long ago." Ravi wanted to ask more, but he saw the fear in her eyes and stayed quiet. He sat beside her, keeping the axe near his hand. When morning came, they both looked tired. The forest seemed peaceful again, as if nothing had happened. The strange mark on the tree was still there, shining in the early light. Ravi decided to walk farther today to see if anyone had camped nearby. Mira wanted to come, but he told her to rest. "If anyone's close, I'll find them," he said. He left after breakfast. The hours passed slowly. Mira tried to work, but her mind kept going back to the voice in the night. She walked to the window again and again, watching for any sign of movement. By afternoon, she grew worried. Ravi had not returned. She stepped outside and called his name, but no one answered. Only the forest replied with the whisper of leaves. Fear began to grow in her chest. She looked at the trees, the same trees that once made her feel safe. Now they looked endless and strange. She whispered a small prayer, hoping Ravi was safe. The sky began to turn orange, and still there was no sign of him. She sat near the door, holding the small wooden carving of a bird she had made for her baby. It was the only thing that gave her comfort. As the last light faded, she saw a figure appear at the edge of the clearing. Her heart leaped with hope, thinking it was Ravi. But when the person stepped closer, she froze. It was not Ravi. It was someone else. A man she had not seen in months, a face from her past. He stopped a few feet away, his eyes cold and sharp. "You thought you could hide here forever, Mira," he said, her breath caught in her throat. She took a step back toward the cabin, her mind spinning. The voice, the footprints, the mark on the tree. It had all been him. Her hands trembled, but her eyes turned fierce. For the first time in months, she felt both fear and strength rise inside her. The forest that once gave her peace was now her battleground. Mira stood frozen near the doorway. The man in front of her looked tired, angry, and full of shadows from another life. His clothes were dirty, his beard unshaved, and his eyes sharp as glass. He took a slow step forward, and the dry leaves under his boots cracked softly. She knew him at once. His name was Neelan, the father of her unborn child, the man she had left behind months ago when the world around her became too heavy to bear. Her voice shook when she spoke. "How did you find me?" Neelan gave a thin smile. "You left without a word, Mira. Did you really think I would stop looking?" Her heart raced. She wanted to run inside, but she knew he would follow. "You shouldn't be here," she said quietly. He looked around at the small cabin, at the wood and stone she had shaped with her own hands. "So this is what you built," he said. "A home without me, all alone in the woods." "This place is mine," Mira said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I don't need you here." Neelan's eyes softened for a brief moment. "You left me with nothing," he said. "I searched for months. When I saw your trail in the village near the hills, I knew it was you. I followed. I needed to see you again." Mira kept her back straight. "There is nothing left to see." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The forest around them was quiet, watching. Then a voice came from behind the trees. "Mira," Ravi called. He stepped into the clearing, holding his small axe. His face changed when he saw Neelan. "Who is this?" Neelan turned sharply toward Ravi. "And who are you?" he asked. Ravi looked at Mira. "Is he the one who's been following us?" Mira nodded slowly. "Yes, this is Neelan." Neelan frowned. "You didn't tell him about me, did you?" "She didn't have to," Ravi said, stepping closer. "You scared her for days. You left signs around, carved the trees." "Why?" Neelan raised his hand slightly. "I only wanted to find her. I didn't want trouble." Ravi's eyes stayed hard. "Then why hide in the dark? Why not come in daylight?" Neelan looked away for a moment. "Because I didn't know if she'd forgive me." The three of them stood there in silence, the wind moving gently between the trees. Mira could feel her heart pounding. She looked from one man to the other, unsure of what to say. Finally, she said, "Both of you stop. I don't want any fight here. I just want peace." Ravi lowered his axe slowly, but his eyes did not leave Neelan. "If you came for peace, then speak. But if you came for anything else, you should leave." Neelan sighed deeply. "I know I made mistakes," he said, looking at Mira. "I was lost, angry, foolish. But when you left, I realized how empty everything felt. I wanted to make things right." Mira's eyes filled with tears she didn't want to show. "You can't change what happened," she said. "I came here to start again, to raise my child in calm, not in fear. I never wanted to hurt you," Neelan said softly. "I came to help." Ravi stepped closer to Mira. "She doesn't need your help," he said. "She's strong. She built all this by herself." Neelan looked at the cabin again, at the walls and roof she had made. "I can see that," he said quietly. "But she shouldn't have had to do it alone." For a moment his voice sounded honest. Mira could hear regret in it. She looked at him carefully. He was not the same man she had known months ago. There was pain in his eyes, but also something broken that could not be fixed. "You should rest," she said finally. "You look weak." Ravi frowned but said nothing. He could see that her tone was calm but firm. Neelan nodded slowly. "I've been walking for days," he said. "I haven't eaten much." Mira stepped aside. "There's food inside. But remember, this is not your home. You can stay one night. After that, you decide what you want to do." He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. "Thank you," he said quietly. They went inside. Ravi kept a watchful eye as Neelan sat near the fire. Mira gave him a bowl of soup and water. He ate slowly, glancing at her now and then. "I can see you've done well," he said softly. "You built a home. You even have company." Mira looked at him calmly. "Ravi helped when you weren't here. When I needed someone, he was there." Neelan lowered his eyes. "I understand," Ravi spoke then, his voice steady. "If you came here to start trouble, you'll find none. But if you came to make peace, then prove it." Neelan nodded again. "I just want to talk. That's all." The rest of the evening passed quietly. The three of them sat near the fire while the forest outside whispered softly. Mira watched the flames, lost in thought. She remembered the first time she met Neelan years ago, when he was kind and full of dreams. But those dreams had turned dark with time. He had grown restless, angry, always chasing something unseen. She had left to protect herself and her child. When the night grew deep, Ravi offered to keep watch again. Neelan slept near the wall, his breathing slow. Mira sat near the doorway, staring at the sky through the small window. She felt her baby move gently. She placed her hand over her belly and whispered, "You're safe, little one. I'll keep you safe." The next morning, Ravi went to fetch water while Mira cleaned the cabin. Neelan woke up and stepped outside. He stood quietly looking at the stream, his face full of thought. Mira joined him after a while. "You should eat before you go," she said softly. He looked at her. "You really want me to leave?" "Yes," she said. "It's better for both of us," he sighed. "I can't go back to the town. There's nothing left there, and I don't want to lose you again." "You already did," Mira said gently, "long ago." For a long moment he stood there silent. Then he said, "Let me help you finish the cabin before I go." "Just for a few days?" Mira hesitated. She looked into his eyes. They no longer held anger, only exhaustion. "All right," she said finally, "but only until it's done." When Ravi returned, he was surprised to see them working side by side. Neelan lifted wood while Mira placed it, and together they worked quietly. Ravi watched them but said nothing. He did not trust Neelan, but he respected Mira's choice. For the next few days, the three of them worked together. The cabin's roof was finished, the walls made stronger, and the place began to feel complete. Yet beneath the peace there was still tension. Ravi never let Neelan out of sight, and Neelan never tried to speak much. One afternoon, as they rested near the fire, Neelan spoke softly. "I'm leaving tomorrow," he said. "The cabin looks strong now. You'll be safe here." Mira nodded. "Thank you for helping." He looked at her with sad eyes. "Take care of the baby. Tell them I tried to do one thing right before I left." Mira felt her throat tighten. "You can still change, Neelan, but not here." He smiled faintly. "Maybe someday." When night came, Ravi kept the fire bright. Mira could not sleep. She felt uneasy again, though she did not know why. She got up and stepped outside for air. The moon was full and bright. The trees cast long shadows on the ground. As she looked toward the stream, she saw something strange, a figure standing near the edge of the forest. For a second, she thought it was Neelan, but then she realized he was asleep inside. The figure moved slightly, then disappeared into the trees. Her heart started to race again. Someone else was out there. She rushed inside, waking Ravi. "There's someone near the stream," she said quickly. He grabbed his axe and ran outside, but the figure was gone. The forest was silent once more. When they went back in, Neelan was awake. "What happened?" he asked. Mira looked at him, her face pale. "We are not alone," she said. "Someone else is watching us now." All three of them sat in silence. The peace they had built in the last few days broke again like glass. The forest outside was quiet, but none of them felt safe anymore. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months. The cabin that once stood as a lonely shelter now felt full of life. The air smelled of pine and fresh bread. The walls echoed with laughter and soft baby cries. The forest that had watched Mari build her dream was now watching her live it. She was no longer alone. Her baby had arrived, small and beautiful, with tiny fingers that curled around her own. She named her Hope, because that was what had carried her through every storm. Ravi stayed by her side after the storm. He helped fix the roof, build stronger walls, and made sure the cabin could face any weather. He gathered wood each morning and caught fish from the river nearby. He smiled more now, and his eyes no longer carried the same sadness. The forest had healed him too, just as it had healed Mari. When Mari's baby was born, Ravi was there. He ran through the rain to get clean water and lit a fire when the night turned cold. He stayed awake beside the fire, worried for her and the baby. When the first cry filled the room, he felt a peace he had never known before. For the first time in years, he felt like he was part of something bigger than himself. After Hope was born, the days became gentle. Mari would sit by the door with her baby wrapped in soft blankets and watch the light play between the trees. Sometimes Ravi would carve small toys from wood and give them to the baby. He said the toys were lucky charms from the forest. Mari would laugh softly and thank him, but peace never stays without challenges. One morning, dark clouds gathered again. A heavy storm hit the valley. The river swelled and rushed near the cabin. Trees shook and the wind howled like a beast. Mari held her baby close while Ravi worked outside to keep the water from reaching the door. He built small trenches and moved stones to block the flow. Mari wanted to help, but Ravi stopped her and told her to stay safe inside. The storm lasted through the night. Rain poured without pause and thunder rolled through the mountains. The cabin stood firm, but water leaked through small cracks in the walls. Mari whispered to her baby that everything would be fine, just as she had whispered to herself months ago when she first came to this place. When the morning came, the storm was gone. The world outside looked broken but alive. Fallen branches covered the ground and the river had changed its path slightly, but the cabin still stood strong. The walls that Mari had built with her own hands had survived another test. She stepped outside with her baby in her arms and Ravi smiled at her. His hair was wet, his clothes were torn, but his eyes shined with relief. They both knew then that the cabin was more than wood and nails. It was a symbol of strength, of survival, and of hope. Mari looked at Ravi and said she could not have done it without him. Ravi shook his head and said she had done it all before he came. He only helped finish what she had started. As the sun rose higher, the forest sparkled again. The river glowed under the light and the air felt fresh and pure. Mari walked to the edge of the forest carrying Hope and looked at the mountains beyond. She remembered the day she first came here, tired and scared with nothing but a dream and a few tools. Now she stood here with her daughter in her arms and a friend beside her. Weeks later, other hikers passed through the valley. They saw the cabin and were amazed. They said it looked strong and beautiful, like it had always been there. They asked if they could rest for a while and Mari welcomed them in. She gave them warm tea and bread, and Ravi told them how Mari had built the cabin by herself before they ever met. The hikers listened with wide eyes. One of them said it was a story that deserved to be told. Mari only smiled. She said she did not build the cabin for praise. She built it because she needed a place to feel alive again. Ravi smiled too and said that sometimes the forest gives you what you need when you least expect it. Hope grew fast. She would crawl on the wooden floor and try to grab the sunlight that came through the window. Mari often thought about the world beyond the forest. She wondered if she should ever go back to the towns and cities she once knew. But every time she thought about leaving, she felt her heart pull her back. This cabin, this forest, and the life she built here felt like home. One evening as the sun set, Mari sat outside with Ravi. The sky was painted with colors of gold and pink. Hope slept in her arms. The air was cool and calm. Mari told Ravi that she had once thought she would never find peace again. Ravi told her that peace often hides in the simplest places. They both looked at the cabin. Smoke rose gently from the chimney. The smell of burning wood mixed with pine in the air. Birds sang from the trees and the world felt quiet and safe. Mari whispered that maybe this was what she was always meant to find. Years passed quietly. Hope learned to walk, then to run. She laughed as she chased butterflies near the river. Ravi built a small garden near the cabin where they grew vegetables and herbs. Mari taught Hope how to plant seeds and take care of the earth. Together they lived in rhythm with the forest. Sometimes travelers still came by, lost or tired. Mari always welcomed them. She would give them food, a place to rest, and tell them stories of courage and patience. Ravi often said that her kindness had turned the cabin into more than a home. It had become a symbol of hope for anyone who found it. On quiet nights, Mari would sit by the fire with Hope on her lap and look at the flames. She would remember the first night she spent here alone, building the first wall, and she would smile. She had built more than a cabin. She had built a life. When Hope was old enough to understand, Mari told her about the time she met a lost hiker who helped her finish the cabin. Hope listened with wide eyes and asked where he came from. Mari smiled and said that maybe the forest had sent him when she needed him most. As time went on, Hope grew strong and curious like her mother. She learned to love the forest, the cabin, and the quiet life they shared. Mari knew then that her dream had come true. She had built a place that would stand for generations, a place of safety, love, and courage. The forest remained their friend. The seasons came and went, and through it all the cabin stood proudly, built by a woman's hands, strengthened by friendship, and filled with the laughter of a child. It was no longer just a story of survival. It was a story of new beginnings, and deep in the valley, under the endless sky, the cabin that Mari built with her bare hands became a legend whispered among travelers, a tale of hope and heart that would never fade.